And welcome to Understanding Photography with Kim Ayres, episode 258. Today we're talking about the high contrast black and white photo challenge. So 2 weeks ago I did an entire podcast about high contrast black and white, about converting your images to black and white, and then which ones are likely to work better in a high contrast mode. So if you want to know all about that, go back, check out episode 257. But then I set a challenge, and we've had, I think it's 9 different people have sent in images. So today we're going to be going through those images, taking a look at them. So stick around. If you happen to be watching live, leave a comment. Let me know you're here. And if you're not watching live, but you're watching the recording, leave a comment anyway. Say hi. Let me know what you think of the podcast, all that kind of stuff. So I think with that one, may as well just make a start. So yes, and welcome to Understanding Photography with Kim Ayres. If you're looking to improve your understanding of photography, you are in the right place. So, as I say, if you happen to be watching live, leave a comment in the live bits. So get the chat going. Tell me where you are. Tell me where what the weather's doing. All the usual kind of chit chat. If you're new here and you've not done this before, you'll see there's a few comments in already. Generally speaking, everybody here, well, not generally speaking, every time, everybody here who regularly turns up, a warm, friendly bunch. So say hello and make yourself welcome. You will be made welcome, I should say. So if you also, but like I say, also if you happen to be watching the recording, you can still leave comments, and that'll be quite good. I mean, although these podcasts go out live, they are all recorded, and which of course you know if you're watching the recording. And of course, there's 258 of these now. So. But I do get notified, and if you've got interesting insights, comments, anecdotes, anything that you feel is related, you want to, then, do leave comments as well, just in the general YouTube comment place. And it is quite good. In fact, actually, I think it might even help the algorithms if you do. Talking about helping algorithms, anybody who does have to be watching live, or even the recording, do remember to click like on the video. So yes, click like, subscribe if you haven't done so already, tell your friends if you haven't done so already, all the usual kind of gubbins. Right, I see we have comments in already, so let's see who's here. April says, greetings from a sunny and warm Long Island, New York. Susan says, hi from a gorgeous sunny autumn day in Kakubri. Sorry I haven't submitted any images for this challenge. Yeah, well, it might be nice and gorgeous in Kakubri, which is only 9 miles down the road from Castle Douglas, where I'm broadcasting this from, but it's become really cloudy, overcast, dull and cool here in Castle Douglas. Nadia says, hello from a warm sunny day in Wooler. Whereabouts is Wooler? That name is awfully familiar. Is that? Yeah, you'll have to remind me where that is, Nadia. Inga joins us from a bright autumnal afternoon in Oslo. Susan's asking Nadia what she's doing in Wooler. Robert joins us, says, howdy all from a mild North Texas, sunny and 70 degrees Fahrenheit. Wow. And Nadia says, a week away from home, starting a new job a week next Monday. Oh, well, congratulations. Hope that all goes well for you, Nadia. Right, okay, so, yeah, well, welcome to everybody. Where are we at? So, yeah, a little bit of introduction, then I'll tell you what, let's do a quick Smug Points update. And so where are we with Smug Points? Let's just click over here. And so far in September, basically Nadia and Inga are both tied on 35 Smug Points each. And then everybody else has got 5 or 10 Smug Points, depending on whether they've turned up and commented live or not. So today then, what we're going to be talking about is the notion of the high contrast black and white challenge. What's this? Marilyn's joined us and says, hello from a sunny Colorado. Oh, that sounds like the weather's pretty good around the rest of the world. Just very cloudy and dull outside my window. Nadia says, okay, Wooler, south of Berwick upon Tweed. I knew it looked familiar. I've seen it on the signpost recently. Last weekend was Maggie and my wedding anniversary, and the two of us, we went over to Northumberland, a bit further down, more kind of amble kind of direction, where there's a wonderful ice cream and coffee shop called Spirelli's, which we always love to go back to, and then long walks on Druridge Bay Beach, which is another really lovely place as well. So yes, I think Wooler is one of those that crops up on the signpost in various places along the Northumbrian coasts. Nice place to be. So where was I? Yes, getting let's come back. So today then we are talking about the high contrast black and white challenge. So yes, 2 weeks ago I talked in depth about the notion of converting your images to black and white, the several different ways you can do it, and how to create and what images work best if you're wanting to go for that high contrast look, because not every single thing does. Now, looking at some of the entries, some people have really grasped that well, and some people have had a slightly more hazy understanding of what it was I was talking about. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through the images, take a look, give how people have interpreted this idea of high contrast black and white, and at the end of it I'll choose my top 3, but also, as introduced in the last challenge as well, I think we will go for a crowd vote as well. So make note as we go, and at the end of it I'll do a quick run through the photos, and anybody who happens to be watching live can leave their vote on which one of the images they think should get bonus points. So yes, smug points to be had. Anybody who's already entered will get 10 smug points for having entered. If you happen to be watching live, remember to leave a comment, because you get your 5 bonus smug points just for being here, just for saying hello live. And if you and then there will be a bonus 30, 20 and 10 for my top 3, and a bonus 20 smug points for the crowd favourite too. Right, so with all that in mind, let's make a start. So high contrast black and white is not just about going black and white, it's about having a change in the way that, generally speaking, most images in black and white, we tend to be looking for full tonal range. But in a high contrast black and white, there's much less tonal range. The whites, things tend to be much lighter and much darker, and a lot less going on in the middle. And some pictures work really well for that, and some don't. Now, what I thought I would do is I would start with April. So if I, where are we? I do that, and I flip over to here. And here we have April's picture. And April says, oh, Meg's joined us and says, afternoon, everyone. April sent in this one. She says, my submission to the high contrast black and white challenge is this abstract bridge photo that I took while I was in the car. Hopefully while somebody else was driving. Or you were sitting in a traffic queue. Do not recommend taking photos on phones while driving. I'm sure you wouldn't. It was a grey day outside, so having it in black and white, high contrast, made it work easier. And that's a really good point, because very often, a lot of our photos, what we want is we want to have, you're wanting plenty of light. On a dull day, generally speaking, things do tend to have more of a kind of, it can sometimes get a bit dull. So actually taking the levels or the curves and shifting the sliders and making them stronger, so stronger darker darks, lighter lights, really adds punch to it. And this is a case in point, I think. What also works rather nicely here is that notion of the strong lines and that kind of semi-abstract kind of feel to it. So we've got the strong wires of the suspension bridge, which are all coming out really quite white, and then we've got the uprights, which are really kind of quite strongly dark. Against now the sky's a little bit more mottled, dull overcast grey. I mean, it would have been maybe even slightly more interesting actually if there hadn't been clouds in it, and it had just been if it had been a dull all over grey. Then you might have just whitened those out. But having said that, I mean, it still adds a bit of texture. So I think this is it's a good start to this. It is about the contrast. It's mostly the darks and it's mostly the lights, and we're not having to worry about too much in between. So yeah, nice start to this, April. Yeah, thank you for sending that one in. Oh, April says yes. My husband was doing the driving. Good. We have to be slight concerned with health and safety on this show if we're being responsible about it. So yes, great one. Thank you. What have we got? Oh, Susan says great abstract, April, and Inga also says nice one, April. Right. Well, next up then, let's go to Nadia, who's usually up in Fife but is now down in Wooler. So where do we go? Nadia then sent in this one, And Nadia says, this is my submission for this week's challenge. I was playing with high key light mono options on my iPhone camera, which I feel turned out well. And this is fun. Yeah, this is so. Children, I think that can work really, because children tend to have very smooth skin. You don't have so much in the way of the, when somebody's got a lot of lines and wrinkles, or beards and stuff like that. Quite often, what can happen is if you sort of push the sliders too far, then it can end up looking more like a line drawing than, you kind of lose something of the picture, the idea that it's a photograph. But this still has very much that photographic quality to it. Fun expression and chart, and I don't know whether you've been playing with it or you say you've been doing it on the phone, but the eyes have become, look like they've been kind of burnt back in slightly. Now that might be a feature of the iPhone and the filters you were using. I'm not sure what editing, or whether you had access to editing software, but that allows the eyes to really stand out. Then the dark rims, the lashes, and they really stand out against the pale skin as well. So yeah, kind of this is much more high key, with the exception then of the dark top that she's wearing. Fun kind of shot, this one, and yeah, like I said, young children are really quite often work well with this kind of shot. So yeah, nice one, Nadia, thank you. Susan says, super image, Nadia, love those eyes. April also says, very cute shot. Cool, right, okay. So next up though, we go to something really quite different, and that is Marilyn. Now Marilyn sent in this one of a hummingbird, which I have to say I rather like too. And Marilyn says, where are we? Kim, I thought it might be interesting to try a high contrast on a subject from nature. This hummingbird was taken in the middle of the day in harsh summer light. Converting it to black and white has made it a much more striking image. And yeah, now this is really interesting. I think what's useful here is, without knowledge of what the original colour one was like, obviously it's a fairly shallow depth of field. We can see that by the fact that it's out of focus on this bit of flower. We've got a bit of flower starting to be in focus here, and it goes out of focus there, likewise here. So there's a narrow plane in which of focus here. So the rest of that background would have smoothed out. Generally, also quite often, if you're trying to photograph something like a hummingbird, you're going to need an incredibly high shutter speed. So high shutter speed, but then in order to counterbalance that, you would have a wide aperture, even though it's quite a sunny day. But I think it works really well. It's captured. You've got a nice pin sharp hummingbird, the head, the face, but because the background is darker, it just really stands out, just pops beautifully. And quite crucially here, I think, is the fact that the flowers below it don't overlap. So it means that there is this completely dark space entirely around it. You could practically cut it out and move it around if you wanted to. So yeah, I think this is a good image, and it does have, although there is a little bit more gradation, the kind of in-betweens, because there is such a large amount of dark, the lighter hummingbird and the bits of flower just really pop against it. They really stand out against it, and this is where I think that sense of a kind of a big contrast is really working well. So very nice one that. Yeah, nice one that, Marilyn. Thank you. Nadia says there was no editing on her previous one. Okay, so those eyes then just kind of either happened with the black and white, or there's something in the iPhone software when you're doing conversion that it recognises faces and eyes and maybe possibly enhances them. But then again, little kids can quite often have those really vivid eyes anyway with the lashes. So where do we get? So April says, great catch. Susan says, great shot, Marilyn. And Inga says, well done. Cool, right. Okay, so let's move on then to Janet. Now, Janet's gone quite abstract, even more abstract than April's, I think, really, with this. And I must admit, when I first started looking at this, I thought, I don't know what it is I'm actually looking at. So, fortunately, Janet told me, and she says, I've attached my submission for the high contrast black and white challenge. This time, instead of shooting for the challenge, I was editing for the challenge. Okay, so what she's done is she's gone back and tried to find an image which she thought would work well for the challenge, and then edited it according to what we were talking about in the last podcast. She says this was shot at a rest stop on the drive through Quebec coming home from Nova Scotia. I found 2 basket chairs piled on top of each other and just liked the patterns. And that's great. That is one of those things where I think it's you know, I do this a lot. I often talk about the idea, you know, like we're scavengers almost. You know, some photos we are hunters, we are hunting down, we know what we're going for. We're almost like in a kind of a hunter-prey kind of mindset. This is what we're looking for, and we're trying to put everything in place to make that happen. Sometimes our photography is more farmer, as in we're setting things up in advance. We're long before the photo's ever taken, we're sort of planting seeds, we're putting things in position so that eventually everything comes to fruition at the right time so we can get the photo that we want. But most of the time there's a kind of a scavenger feel to us, that we go around and we see something, and if our eye is trained, if we're used to the idea of looking, then we suddenly notice things which maybe the average person wouldn't notice. And we go, oh, that could be an interesting photo. And sometimes it's a really interesting photo in its own right, and sometimes it's potentially an interesting photo. So I have folders full of things which are bits of texture, you know, whether it is something like a bit of a basket chair or a piece of rug or some moss on a wall, which in itself maybe isn't quite enough there, but there's a feeling that maybe if I got in and I did a bit of editing, played around on some kind of level with the abstract, I could turn it into something more interesting. And I think basket chair tends to be one of those kind of things, really. So yeah, with this kind of large round hole at the bottom and then all the lines splaying out of it, it's sort of, you know, drawing your attention down. The only thing I would really say with this one, though, Janet, is that because all the attention is drawing you down to the white hole, then actually because it's completely white and there's nothing else in, I mean, there's a little bit of interest here where the light's just catching, and that's quite interesting. But this bit here, totally empty, is slightly failing to deliver. All the line is drawing us down to this point, and then there's nothing actually in there. Now, whether you sort of would separately sort of take a different layer and then actually add back in the texture that's in here, or something like that, I think that might actually enhance it slightly. Oh, hi. Oh, Janet actually just joined us here and says, hi from sunny Fergus, Ontario. Just found somewhere to park. Well, there you go. I hope, did you join us at the beginning of this one, Janet? So yes, hopefully then you're just catching up on this idea that I'm talking about. I love the idea, but I think there is a sort of sense of our eyes getting drawn to a place, and then we're not quite delivering what's happening at that place. And I think this is one of those things where I would suspect on your original, I don't know, you didn't send me the original to look at, but because I can see there's a bit of texture here, there might have been more going on in the middle. In which case, essentially, I would suggest you kind of edit that bit on a different layer and then blend the two of them together so that there's something that our eye is being drawn towards as well. But yes, I think it's a great idea to notice. Oh, Inga says, what if you reduce the highlight? I think even if you made that white into a sort of soft grey, I think you would still have essentially the same problem in the fact that it's blank, really, rather than there being something interesting to look at. Also, if you reduced it to grey, you kind of reduce the contrast a bit. There are things you could do, but I think overall, Inga, that ideally what you want, whenever you're doing this with any kind of shot really which has leading lines, you'll need to be leading towards something. You ideally need some kind of reward at the end of the line. So whether it's you're following train tracks, whether you're following up the side of a building, whether you're following a wiggly road, or lines from the edge of a table, or in this case the basket chairs, whatever it is. If you've got lines taking you to somewhere, then you want to have something at the end of that because the construction, the composition of the picture is like a pointing finger. And if I'm pointing a finger at something, you look at what it is I'm pointing my finger at. And if I'm just pointing at a blank piece of wall, you're looking at the blank piece of wall going, oh, what's there now? What have I got to work out? What am I missing? And you're not getting that kind of immediate reward from it. So something to keep in mind. It doesn't necessarily have to be very complex, but just maybe in this case, it's a little bit of extra texture or something I think would work well. But yeah, I do like the rest of the shape of that works really well, Janet. Right, okay, where are we? So let's move on to Inga. Now, interestingly, Inga sent me one photo. I started to give her a little bit of feedback. She sent me a second photo. I'm going to show you both photos and talk a little bit about them. So this is Inga's first photo. Now, what she says is, so here are we've got two high contrast black and white photos. I'm not sure about either, so choose which you want. If it doesn't work, it would be interesting to learn why, according to the theme of the challenge anyway. Okay, so this one here, this landscape, we've got this landscape and it looks like there's mist. Certainly there's kind of layers, it gets fainter as it goes back. But I'm not convinced of it as a high contrast image. Now, first of all, actually it's quite dark. It doesn't go to the full whites. So if I open this in Photoshop and over here, if I open up the levels, what we can see is there's a great big gap over on the right hand side. Now, if we're looking at this histogram, which this bit's about the darks, this bit's about the lights, and this bit's about the mid-range. And generally speaking, the shape of this histogram, in a well-spread wide tonal range bit, you tend to find there's a kind of almost like a hill in the centre. Most of it's in the mid-range, and it sort of drops off so that you don't have too many blacks and you don't have too many whites. In a high contrast image, generally speaking, it's more of a valley. So you tend to have more up at the black end, more up at the white end, and not so much in the mid-range. Now in this one, what we see is it's a slope. There's a lot in the dark, but there's nothing over in the white. And in fact, there's a great big gap here. And what I could do immediately is pull that up. So at least we have the white. However, having said that, the big problem that we've got here is what you can see is there's quite a lot in the mid-range. And that's because of the kind of photo it is. And so what I was talking about last time with the notion of high contrast, the kind of photos that work best are those that are lending themselves to strong darks, strong brights, and you don't need a lot in between. So quite often certain kinds of minimalism photos, certain kinds of abstract, things with strong geometrical lines, these kind of things tend to work better as whereas things with subtle gradations don't, because the subtlety runs right across the spectrum of the tonal range. So when you've got a subtle range, it might work better as an overall black and white photo, but as a high contrast black and white photo, you're removing the subtle gradations. So if you start with a photo in which the subtle gradations are absolutely a key part of it, it's not likely to work so well as a black and white, as a high contrast black and white photo. So this photo here has too many subtle gradations. You want to have the fact that we've got these bits in the foreground, we've got the sort of almost silhouetted leaves against a pale grey sky, but then we've got this bit of mountain, but then we've got this bit which is slightly foggier, this bit, even a bit over here. So there's several different layers, and those layers just are all in between the two endpoints. So it's the key thing to remember here is that if you are going for a high contrast image, you really need to have everything bunched up again in the lights and in the darks, and the subtle gradations will get lost. And in a good high contrast black and white, that's fine, that's good, that's the strength you're playing to. But in something which has a lot of subtle gradations, then high contrast is the wrong way to go about editing it. It's just going to kind of ruin, you're getting the worst of all worlds with that. So I hope that kind of makes some kind of sense here. I don't know how I would change it. I mean, if I really drag up the whites and drag down the blacks, so we end up with something like that. Okay, so that's now a high contrast image, but it's not doing anything for us. It's not actually that obvious what it is. We're fine, we can work out that these are leaves here, but now we don't really know what's going on over there. The strength of your photo, and I would imagine your original photo, would be all these gradations. And so the editing style should play to those strengths. So it might be in colour, it might be in black and white, but actually you want to explore those gradations rather than sort of lose them in the high contrast. So I hope that all makes sense. A couple of wee comments here. Oh, Viji's joined us and says, good evening, everyone. Glad you could join us, Viji. April says, looks like a pretty area to visit. And Inga says, makes absolute sense. Thank you. Great. Okay, that's good. Well, okay. Well, that's just... So Inga then also sent a second photo, which was this one, which certainly works better. So what we've got here is we've got 3 gulls, looks like 2 adult gulls and a young gull, sitting on a water fountain of some kind, and the water's coming down here. Now, there is a lot more contrast in this, and in fact, actually, if I do open that in Photoshop, and if you compare the histogram, so again, I will go to levels, you can see that it stretches more over on the right here. And I can pull that up and brighten that a little bit. But there is still quite a lot of range going on here. There's still quite a lot happening in the mid-tones. Now, this stands out because you've got a large chunk of cloud here and you've got a darker part of the water. But again, I would say the thing with the water is it's got a lot of subtle gradations. And, you know, the more we kind of push the high contrast part of it, the more we end up feeling like we've got blown highlights and the darks have gone too dark. And what we've done is we've lost the subtleties. And so when you're coming to something like water in here, I think really, again, the strength of the photo is going to be in the subtle, more in the subtle gradations. So ultimately then, Inga, I think whilst this one is better than your previous photo, I still don't think this is really a good example of, or a good photo to start with to edit into the, as a high contrast edit. And with all of these things, it's worth remembering that different photos lend themselves to different kinds of editing. It's not that necessarily one photo is a good photo or a bad photo. There's a good photo for a particular kind of editing and a bad photo for a particular kind of editing. There's a good photo for a particular competition and a bad photo for a particular kind of competition. And the same photo can do extraordinarily well in one competition and extraordinarily badly in another competition, and do extraordinarily well with one kind of editing and be completely ruined by a different kind of editing. So understanding how the photo is going to be seen, how it's going to be received, where it's going to be placed, and what the instructions or the words gone. The description of for the challenge or the competition becomes extremely important. So, you know, a black and white competition, you don't stick a colour photo into it, or if you do, you can't expect to score very highly. Vice versa, something about flowers and you stick in a picture about decaying buildings, it's not going to work. So you understand already that there are pictures which are going to lend themselves to a challenge topic. But then there are also this notion of editing as well. And so when you come to a particular challenge or competition or whatever, then picking the right kind of photo as your starting point, if you're going to be doing a lot of editing to it, becomes a crucial part of understanding the photographic and editing process. Where's it going to be seen? Who's going to be looking at it? What are they expecting from it? And if you want to score highly, what kind of image do you start with in order to then edit it, enhance? The editing is enhancing the narrative. So you're trying to make sure that the editing is sympathetic to the image that you've got. And if that image isn't going to fit that particular challenge, use a different image, and rather than try and shoehorn something in that doesn't quite work. So hope that all makes sense. But yeah, many thanks for sending those ones in, Inga, because I think it really helps to kind of emphasize that point. Right, okay, so just a quick little reminder here then that if you're finding these podcasts useful, interesting, entertaining even, and you would like to support them, then buymeacoffee.com/Kim Ayres is one of the ways you can do it. And of course, invite your friends, tell other people about it. We're now over 258 episodes in. We've got plenty of space to grow these podcasts. So if you can think of any other ways of I've kind of given up on the idea of having any understanding of how the algorithms work and how to get this into anything else. So if you've got any ideas how to increase the following, then I'm all ears. But at the very least, yes, click the like button if you haven't done so already. That always helps a bit. And occasionally we do get somebody turn up because while we're going live and enough people have clicked like, YouTube's dropped it into a couple of people's feeds who've gone, I wonder what's going on for that. Well, we had somebody last time, although he doesn't seem to have come back anyway. Right, where should we get to then? Let's move on. Right, yes. Now, next, we have one from Meg. And where are we? Let's flip over to here. And Meg sent in this one, which I have to say I really, really like. Meg says, where are we? Hi Dad, here's my photo for the challenge. It's a bathroom plug with water splashes on it that I entered for the water challenge. So a few months ago, some of you may remember, we were doing a challenge around the notion of water. And Meg, using her phone, took a photo of the plug in the bath, which had water splashes on it. Now, for the black and white challenge, she's turned it to black and white. And this kind of thing, I think, has worked really well as a kind of a high contrast image. Now, there are some subtle greys and bits and pieces, but by and large, we have, the outside is white. There's little chunks of black here, which I think is probably, that will probably be a reflection of her phone as she's holding it over it. But what it's done is, by having the white of the bath and the black of the phone, is it means that some of these splashes, like here, also create these rather wonderful black and white lines as well. So it becomes a very abstract image. And so to follow on then from what we were talking about with Inga, about the fact that certain images will lend themselves better to a black and white conversion, and not just a black and white conversion, but a high contrast black and white version, I kind of think this is one of those that really does. So it's become near abstract. You might be able to work out what it is, but it's not necessarily instantly recognisable unless you kind of stop and think about it. But that sort of metal plug, water on it, the way the reflections are distorting, but then put it into black and white and then pushing those more extremes with the levels gives us, I think, something which is really quite fascinating. So yeah, I really good one, this, Meg. I really like this a lot. So yeah, thank you for sending that one in. Comments, where were we at? Robert says, I like this one, Meg. April says, a creative shot, Meg. Inga says, this is a great one, really like it. Nadia says, this is so lovely, Meg. Susan says, spot on, Meg. And Marilyn says, well done, Meg. So, well, very popular one for you there, Meg. Yes, now the next one, another, Nadia says it also looks like a silver button with rain on it. Yeah, well, I think that's yes, I know exactly what you mean. And I suppose it's very similar with that idea of, so kind of a little metal plug that you've got a spring press into, and then, yeah, metal and water, silvery metal water, and water. So this next one then is Andy. So Andy said, here's my submission. So this is Andy's submission. He says, here's my submission for the high contrast challenge. It's a studio shot in the style of Platon, of Teddy Boy Shawnee Longlegs. So this is Shawnee Longlegs, black and white photo taken in the style of Platon. Now that's Platon. So Platon is a photographer. Some of you may have come across him before now, and if you haven't, type him into Google, look him up. Just Platon and photography. And Platon is he's a well-known portrait photographer who has a very distinctive style. In fact, he tends to have, there's kind of two styles that he does. A particular colour style that he does, and there's a particular black and white style that he does. But both of them tend to involve, he uses a wide angle lens and then gets in close, much closer than you would kind of normally expect. And so he's playing with that notion of distortion. Now what Andy has done here is he's taken the ideas, the tropes of what Platon does, and in this case, you know, studio kind of white wall background, and then he's gone for this kind of high contrast sense of it, with Shawnee Longlegs with his fist towards the camera. So there's distortion. The arm looks so much bigger. Lovely sense of composition with this. And as a portrait photographer, yes, this does it for me big time. There's been several times, I mean, whenever I look at Platon's work, I keep thinking, I'm going to have to give that a go. And for one reason or another, I've never yet been in a situation whereby I've had the right model or remembered at the point that I've got the right model and the right circumstances to give that style of photography a go. It is one of those things I kind of want to try out. The only problem that we've got here for a black and white photo is it's not completely black and white. And I think there's a slight tint in with this one, Andy. So if I open this in Photoshop, if I go to the hue saturation, if I grab the saturation bar and move it up, you can see that there's still a kind of, you know, the suit becomes blue. It's not completely black and white. All we've got to do is just drag the saturation down, and it's perfect. And that's just to kind of remember, Andy, that if you are going for a black and white competition that specifically says black and white in it, then make sure it's black and white and not. Now, if it says monochrome's slightly different. Monochrome might be black and white, or it could be blue and white, or it could be red and white. Monochrome, you're allowed, it could be sepia or cyanotone. You've got a leeway with a little bit of colour. But if it specifically says black and white, then make sure it's black and white. Superficially it looked black and white, but at the moment I started looking, I thought something not quite right with the colour. Grab the saturation and just drag it down. But other than that, excellent photo. This does it for me, I do have to say. Nice one, Andy. Meg says thank you very much to everybody for their comments. April says good shot. Viji likes Meg's shot as well. Inga says cool shot. Susan says wonderful image, Andy. It's definitely got that Teddy Boy feel. Tells me all I need to know about Teddy Boys. Yeah, now I will just say that for anybody who's interested, go and follow Andy's Instagram or find him on Flickr. And he's got a whole, his TED series is really quite amazing. So where he's pretty much embedded himself with Teddy Boy culture and has a whole wonderful set of photos, really worth looking at. So yeah, great photo there, Andy. Many thanks for sending that one in. Right, okay, where are we at? Let's move on to Robert. Now, Robert sent in this photo and says, this photo was taken in Franklin, Tennessee at the factory. There is a kind of blacksmith with a shop, and he was graciously enough to allow me to photograph him while he worked. I like this photo particularly because of all the coal and grit, as well as all the tools laying about. I know the firelight is blown out, as it would be in low lighting. However, I believe the edit recovered the look and feel of the situation. This was my first go at blacksmith photography, and I believe I will do better next time I get the chance. This is not easy to capture the sparks and action as one would think. It's not as easy to capture, especially under fluorescent lighting. And this is true. If you ever try to photograph fire, flames, it is extraordinarily difficult to get the balance because, in essence, fire is moving very, very fast, and it's very, very bright. So if you want to capture the flames in that kind of frozen moment, then you have to go for a very fast shutter speed. But if you do that, you tend to lose all the ambient light, so everything around it just ends up being very, very dark. So then if you have a wider aperture or a slower shutter speed in order to try and make sure there's light around it, what tends to happen is the fire then whites out because there's just too much light going into it. So it is a very, very difficult kind of balance. Now, sometimes if you really know what you're doing, you really want to go ahead and play with it, using a strobe or flash and getting the balance of that light to light up the background while using your camera settings in order to freeze the moment of the firelight. But again, it's not without its complications. It's highly technical. It takes a lot of practice and playing around with. But if you get it right, it can be very effective. So April says the fire has a very cool look to it. Now, when we come back, so if we look at this then, there is this whiteout here, and it's a kind of a difficult one here because as a high contrast black and white, again, I'm not totally sure that it particularly fits the bill, because what you run into is the fact that there is a lot of other gradation which you need, subtle gradations in the coal, in the firebox behind, in the tools, and ultimately what makes this photo, or could make this photo work, is about the subtleties of gradation rather than the high contrast bit of it. Yes, there's a bright light of fire and there's some dark shadows, but there's a lot of range in between that if you push it too much, you just end up losing the subtlety of the image. Now, Robert did also send in the raw file, and I just want to show you something else with this. Now, so here's Robert's raw file, and as we can see, you know, we've got this kind of bright yellow bit here. Now, if I hit auto, now interestingly, what's happened here is it's darkened down the highlights, but by doing so, it's created this sort of grey bit here, which isn't that great. Doesn't fill me with a lot of joy, to be honest. It sort of looks odd. It looks like painted stripes onto it. But having said that, if I take off, let's take off the auto, and say we were trying to make, see, I think we bring the highlights down, but there's a point here where we get those lines, but bring the highlights just back up a little bit, just so that they're barely visible, and maybe you get something where you've got the hint of it without such a strong line. And then you could possibly even use a slight darken or multiply with a yellow brush or something like that. Now at this point, that's kind of how you're playing with the flames. And in a way, what you're making the most of with something like this, let's close that one of Andy's, is not just the flame, but is the reflection of the flame on the wall behind it as well. So there's a little bit of kind of playing around with the colour that you want to have. Now, if you're going to go black and white, and again, I just don't think this is really the best image for a high contrast black and white, but if you are going to go for a black and white, what I would suggest is, because of that problem that we were playing around with the sliders here, is to look at channels. What are the red channels doing? Now, the red channel is obviously blowing out the fire. That becomes very bright, but we are getting more lightness where the reflection of the flame is coming into the background. If we go for the green channel, the background's getting darker. If we go to the blue channel, the background's got darker again. But look at the flames. The flames look much nicer by comparison. So what I would be tempted to do is I would copy the blue channel, go back here. If I was turning this into black and white, and paste it. Let's go back into here, go to the red channel because I want the background, and I'll select all, copy, and then go back to here. So what I would do is start with the red channel, then take the blue channel, inverse mask it, and then let's say we'll set the opacity to something like about sort of 50%ish. Make sure that's on white, not that, sorry, X, that's what I wanted, right? And then essentially lightly paint that blue flame back in, because that blue layer flame I think is much more interesting than the red layer flame. But we want the red for the background. And I think now we sort of end up with something like that. That becomes a little bit more interesting. Now what we can do, if we want, put all that onto a final layer, go back into camera raw, and then we could do things like, you know, give it a bit of a vignette, play with the contrast a little bit, maybe play just a little bit more with that, maybe even sort of a little bit of clarity, something thereabouts. And then possibly what we could do is take the mid-tones, and I'll have this, you know, highlight and just brighten up a couple of little bits where we want, just to kind of pull out a little bit more into the shadows here, just to kind of make it slightly more interesting. Now go to the levels and just nudge that up a little bit, something like that. And I think we end up with a more interesting photo. Now, this then works as a photo in black and white, but it's not working as a high contrast. If you put this into a high contrast competition, it wouldn't score very well, because it's mostly, you know, as we can see, if we look over on the histogram here, it's all kind of one-sided. And if I drag this back up to here, we end up all with the blown out highlights of the fire again as well. So it's very much a compromise kind of photo. So in order to make it work, you've got to have an understanding of, first of all, how to try and balance the light and the dark when you're taking the photo. When you're converting to black and white, you've got to have an understanding of how to use the different styles of black and white. Don't just use the black and white slider. Like I say, take a look at something like the channels and then overlay them. And then understand again that if you're going to do a black and white version of this, you've got to play to the strengths of it as a black and white photo. And that strength isn't in the high contrast. The high contrast just isn't going to work with the flame, because you want to have the subtle gradation. So just as we were talking to Inga about before, that notion of wherever there's subtle gradations, if they are important to the photograph, then going for a high contrast edit is just going to ruin it, basically. It's not going to work. You're using that editing style is removing from the very strength of the photo. So use a different editing style, apply, and then place it into a different place. So I hope that all makes sense. But thanks for sending that one in, Robert, because that really helps us kind of nail in and get a better understanding of what's going on with the high contrast there. April says, oh, the fire has a cool look to it. Robert says, oh, that's so much better. Susan says, great idea, Robert, but I think Kim has worked his magic on it. Okay, so we're on to the final photo now, and then we will do the we will go through the images and do the crowd vote. Okay, so stick around. You get your chance to say what you think would have the vote. Now, I've already decided on my top 3, and I've made a note of that, but I'm going to let you have your crowd vote independent before I say what I'm going to do, because I don't want you to be influenced by me. So, but before we get to that, we need one more. And what I'm going to now is, oh, sorry, hold it, open that. That's opened on the wrong program. Open that with photos. And it's Viji. And Viji sent in this one. And Viji says, I would like to submit the cotton buds photograph for this challenge. It is a still life photo I took for a previous challenge, but then did not submit. I think it's apt for this challenge. I placed the cotton buds in a container and spread them out. It looked like a flower from the top angle. This photo was taken on my iPhone, and I was happy with the result. And I think this is a fun one. This is a good one, and it's a good example, another good example of a good use of a high contrast black and white. So we're starting with this notion. So the cotton buds are light, the background is dark. There's pattern, there's shape, there's lines, there's texture. But in fact, actually, if I pull that up in Photoshop here, just to sort of show you what I mean about the histogram. If I go to the levels on this, now you've not gone completely to the whites. Now if I nudge that up, say to there, which is probably to just give it that little bit of boost. Now I'll put another levels on here, And what you find is there's a point where it's pinged at into the blacks and a point where it's pinged into the whites. But the rest of it, the mid-range, is very, very low. And that's the point, really. It's not a rich tonal range like a hill. It's more like a low valley. So that's really, so this is a kind of a fun one. I think, again, like I say, it works. And when you're doing high contrast, there are certain themes that work quite well. Some of them are things like silhouettes quite often, because you've already got a high contrast there before you even start converting it to black and white. And sometimes the notion of kind of geometric or abstract shapes also can kind of work rather well. You think about Meg's plug as well. And so something like this, I think, is another one which, the brightness of the white of the cotton bud tips completely against the black background, but then the fact that it's spread out and we've got this cone of shapes and the lines that kind of go within it. So yeah, great photo there, Viji. Many thanks for sending that one in. Right, so thank you then to everybody who has sent in an image. What have we got here? April says, creative still life. Susan says, love it, Viji. It does indeed look like a flower. Viji says, thank you. And Inga says, oh, this works very well, I think. Very nice to abstract. Cool. So there we go. We've had 9 different people send in the images. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back through the images. And I want you to give me your vote. Which one, and I'm afraid it's just one, not a 1, 2, 3. Tell me which is the one that you think should get the bonus smug points for the crowd favourite. And then I will top them up. So before you vote, I will just run through them again. So take a look through them all, make a little mental note as we go, think which one's your favourite, then think, does any of those surpass my favourite? And then when I get to the end, put it in. So this first one then is April. So if this is your favourite one, then vote for April. Secondly, after the bridge, we have this one of the young girl from Nadia. So Nadia is done the black and white of the young girl. Third one then is Marilyn with the Hummingbird. So if the Hummingbird is your favourite, Marilyn is the one that you want to vote for. Fourth up, we have Janet's basket chairs. So if this is your favourite, then Janet. Next up, we have Inga with the landscape and or the seagulls. I'll allow Inga both of those because we were demonstrating this. So the landscape or the seagulls, vote for Inga. Then we've got the plug from Meg. So if the plug with the water droplets on it is your favourite, then Meg gets your vote. Seventh, we've got Andy with the teddy boy, Shawnee Longlegs in the style of Platon. That's Andy for 7th. 8th, we've got Robert with Blacksmith's Forge. So that's Robert in 8th. And then 9th is Viji with the cotton buds. So now you've seen them all, put into the comments which one's your favourite. Now, even if you happen to be watching the re-recording of this, then still put it into the comments as well. Just it's kind of fun just to know what people think. And maybe, even if you're watching this in a couple of years' time, come back and comment again in case you've changed your mind as well. So that'll be interesting to see how that goes. So yeah, type your images in now with your, like I say, not a top 3, just the one and your first choice as the number 1 to see who gets the bonus points. We'll need to give that another moment or two while everybody gets their images in. Right, yeah, so hopefully then that whole idea of, actually I'll tell you what, let's just tell you while everybody's actually voting for that, I will just let you know that next week we are going to be doing a feedback session. Okay, so not one of those for the best part of a month. So feedback session next week. So if you're wanting feedback, if you want to improve your photography, there's not that many places where you can get genuine feedback on your images. Email me your image and you could, not that one. Where are we? Hold on, if I do that. And then that's what I'm trying to do. So kim@kimayres.co.uk is one of the ways you can send me the image, or you can go to the Flickr group or the Facebook group, which is flickr.com or facebook.com/groups/UPwKA UPwKA. Stick your images in either of the groups or email it to me. Tell me about the photo. Tell me what your sticking point is. Tell me where, the bit you're unsure about. And this can be anything. This can, as long as it's photography related, it can be, whether you've got a photo that you quite like and you feel is quite good, but it doesn't get the traction you think it should. It never appears particularly well. So you're wondering if you've got a blind spot towards it and you would like another pair of eyes on it. Or maybe you've got a photo that you know isn't working, but you're not sure quite why it's not working. Or you've tried an edit and maybe the edit isn't working. You're not sure what the best style of editing would be. Any of these things or something else entirely, then send me the image and we can put it in and I will give feedback and critique next week. But make sure you get your images into me. I have up to about 4 spaces for that if I'm going to, and I'll do it on a relatively kind of first come first served basis. So the earlier you get your image in, the more likely you are that I'll be able to feature it. Okay, right. With that in mind, let's flick back and see here what we've got. So Viji has gone for, we've got, Marilyn, Meg, April, Meg, Andy, April, and Andy. So let's just check this. So Marilyn, Meg gets 4, Andy gets 2. So with that one then, Meg is the winner. Meg, and congratulations, Meg. Well done. So crowd vote is for this one by Meg. So Meg gets the bonus 20 points. Let's make a wee note of that. For the high contrast black and white challenge. Well done, Meg. Congratulations. Now, my own top 3 that I decided on were, well, this was a tricky one because I can't not do Andy, right? I mean, this photo just, it does it for me on so many levels. And I am a portrait photographer, so I have a bias, right? Andy really is well. And quite apart from just that little bit of just make sure it's desaturated, Andy. But this is such a fantastic photo. So this, but at the same time, I also love this one. This to me is an ideal version of a high contrast black and white. By taking, and what I really love about this is it's taking something that is so mundane, so everyday. I mean, how often we're at the sink every single day and we look down and we glance down, and to take an idea of something that we see all the time but see it differently, I think is really powerful. So for the first time in the history of doing challenges, I'm going to do a joint first place. So Andy and Meg are my both joint first places. So both of them will get the 30 smug points for that. So congratulations to Andy and Meg. But Meg will also get a bonus 20 for gaining the crowd vote on that. Now, my second choice, the second place then, is Viji. I have to say I love this one. I think this is a really good, powerful, strong idea of again, it's that notion of taking something as simple as cotton buds, placing them, and getting that abstract, that high contrast. I think it works really well. And third place for a bonus 10 smug points, I think has to go to Marilyn here for the Hummingbird. It's a beautiful photo, it's a beautiful shot, but also whenever I see, the thing is about hummingbirds is their colour, and by and large I think I've only ever really seen colour photos of hummingbirds, and you would think that because it's such a colourful creature and it's usually with colourful flowers and a colourful garden, that colour is the way to go. So converting it to black and white but also having this kind of high contrast, I think works so well, and it works well in a way that I would never have considered doing that. I think if I had a picture of a hummingbird I don't think I would think about converting it to black and white, and yet it works so well. So Marilyn definitely gets the bonus 10 for that as well. So congratulations to all of you, but thank you as well to absolutely everybody who entered. Remember, these smug points, they're just a bit of fun. Maybe induce a little bit of competition, but hopefully not so strong that anybody starts to build up a bit of resentment. It's a bit of fun. But I will now have to go away, add up all the smug points, work out who's won the smug points for September, because this is the last one of September. Once I've worked that out, I will then be in contact with the winner to see what they want to choose for the theme for October. Now, the first week of October, next week, we will do a feedback challenge, and that gives me a little bit of time to chat to whoever's won the smug points for September and work out what the other theme will be for October. And then the following week, we will... So next week's the 5th. On the 12th, then we should have a theme. I will talk in depth about the theme, set the challenge for the 26th. I think that would be. Which is that's the day after my birthday. Yay! So yeah, that's what we will be doing with October. Right, so I think that... I'm going to grab the glasses off the top of my head. I put them down there. Is that it? Yes, I think that's basically it. So, okay, yeah, a few people are saying congratulations to Meg and yay and wow and thank you ever so much and congrats to all and have a great week and all the usual kind of stuff. So, one last quick reminder that if you find the podcast useful, interesting, entertaining, all of that, then buymeacoffee.com/Kim Ayres is one of the ways you can support this. And don't forget to like if you haven't clicked the like, subscribe if you haven't clicked subscribe, and tell your friends if you haven't yet told your friends. And with all that, I look forward to seeing you all next week. Take care. Bye-bye.